Hey everyone, we're here with JJ, the co-founder and CEO of Rootly. Thanks for joining us, JJ.
Thank you so much for having me. For anyone that doesn't know about Rootly, we build a modern on-call and incident management platform used by companies like Ripley, Clay, Webflow, and enterprises like NVIDIA, Canva, LinkedIn, Figma. And so excited to talk to you guys today.
Awesome. So Rootly is really interesting to me because you guys entered a space that's already pretty crowded. There's old players, but there's also startups. But you guys went in there and you've gotten a lot of traction. So what's interesting to me is to understand, like, what did you see or what changed to allow you guys to enter a market and really take so much market share?
I think two things. One was, previous to starting Rootly, I was at Instacart. I was owning their 0 to 1 enterprise business, grew to about a quarter of our revenue. And we were seeing a lot of incidents there. And who better to complain to than my co-founder and CTO, who was the first SRE there. And so we actually began solving our own problems. We began building a solution as an internal tool before we quickly realized that everyone in the market could use something like this. And when we saw that everyone could use this, we knew for certain that there were incumbents in the space and we weren't just going to be able to sell this on day one. So we really worked backwards from not only the customer need, but how are we going to drive a wedge into a company's existing stack and what was going to be compelling. Our longer term vision at that time was, hey, we wanted to be this reliability platform that did all of these components. But if we try to sell them all at once, people are going to laugh us out of the room. We have no credibility. And so we focused on one. We focused on the collaboration niche where people were, how were they orchestrating and responding to incidents, and not the on-call piece, which is really well defined by companies already like PagerDuty. And by finding our foothold there, we were able to build that wedge in, then expand our moat, then start taking that portion of the business. So it's a little bit of a Trojan horseplay, but it also helped our buyers psychologically, mentally understand where we played. As soon as we started getting confused in the early days with, a larger on-call solution, people weren't really as interested.
So talk to me a little bit about that use case that was kind of the wedge, because as an engineer, I understand PagerDuty and incident response, like on-call response. But tell me a little bit about like what specifically was that wedge. What does that look like in practice for you guys?
Totally. The way to kind of think about a tool like PagerDuty is this single player game that allows on-call engineers to wake up in the middle of the night and be alerted that something's wrong. The analogy I love using with customers is they're the smoke detector. They're really good at telling you when something smells funny. They're great at doing it reliably. But once you wake up and you realize, hey, my kitchen is on fire, what should I do next? Or hey, my living room's on fire and I've never encountered this before, or someone very junior on your team is encountering it for the first time, it falls apart. And so we built a tool that actually helps you not only wake you up in the middle of the night, be the smoke detector, but also the fire brigade and help you orchestrate that response to the incident. And we help you do it very consistently. And then afterwards, we help you learn and do a retrospective around, hey, why did this fire happen? Maybe it's because I left the stove on. Maybe I should get a timer and make sure my stove is never left on like that again.
What's really interesting about you guys is, you're fairly young, but you have all these like pretty massive companies that have joined the platform and used it. What was the secret here about what you were able to sell into these companies? Or, was it the product itself was really solving a need? Were you guys really good at the way you were selling and handling enterprise sales? I'd love to learn more about that.
It's one of the things that we baked into our culture early on was a strong top-down motion. I have a pretty firm belief that big companies are only built with really great outbound processes. And I think from everyone on your leadership to the last BDR on your team needs to embody that. In the very early days, I would spend, not only were you, wearing the role of the PM, the engineer, and the support person, but I was also the BDR. I would spend, 8 to 10 hours a day cold calling, cold emailing executives at these companies and trying to get them interested. A bunch of no's came along the way, but you only needed a few. And of the ones that agreed and took a demo and were excited about our product, we were able to build a lot of momentum with them. They started telling their friends and colleagues that were in this space. And so it does compound, not as much as, interest in a bank, but it certainly compounds and you build brand equity around there. And so that's become powerful for us. And the other thing is focus. I think it's really easy to get distracted to go build all of these different components, in observability or in security or in ITSM. And we said to ourselves, hey, we are going to solve this problem better than anyone else on the market. And if we do that right, then that'll open up to opportunities in the future. So intense focus also helped us serve the enterprise segment really, really well.
It's really interesting. One of the things you hear about enterprise is like, oh, there's a lot of custom solutions they want. It's like, oh, we'll give you, a 6-figure contract if you do this one extra thing. And then you've built all these little one extra things and the product isn't cohesive anymore. So talk to me about that focus. Like, how are you guys able to maintain that focus when I'm sure there were kind of competing priorities coming from these potentially really big accounts? Or maybe there weren't.
An interesting value as a company, I don't think I've ever heard anywhere before, but we love saying to ourselves, don't get too cute about it.
Hmm.
Getting too cute about something, I'll give you an example. When we were doing this sprint recently around our mobile app. We were trying to figure out, of these 6 features, which one should we do first? And we were getting stuck in this paralysis of, was this important for a deal? Was this important feedback? Is this, would this make us more competitive, or is this innovation? And after 2 meetings, we realized, hey, we could have finished half of this list by the time we got there. And I think we got way too cute about it. And also, similarly, the way we reacted to customer feedback was, hey, we're not going to take this lens of, if Emit tells us this is something that they need, it makes sense for a product, I'm not going to run this traditional product management cycle of gathering data. Does every customer require it? Were these the right signals? Let me run a SQL query and check the usage of something like this. Because a lot of the magic you can have, especially when you're a smaller company like ours, is you can just get it done. And you can just do those things without adversely affecting the rest of the platform. And the other thing that we've done is we've architected our platform strategically. Of course, we think of ourselves as a SaaS business, but the way that we develop and work with these enterprises is a little bit less so. If they need some customization on top of what we're currently doing, we're able to do that.
And you're able to do that without kind of bloating the product or making it harder to build for somebody else or making it too confusing for someone else?
Exactly. It makes doing one-offs really easy, because the thing to understand for anyone that is selling into enterprises is you're up against change management, especially if you're displacing an existing solution. And even if you're not displacing an existing tool, they're going to have an existing process. A company that we might go to, let's say a big bank that we work with, has 25 years of history in terms of how they communicate during incidents. I'm not going to be the tool that walks in there and tells them, hey, everything you've done for the last 25 years, that's ridiculous. That doesn't follow the best practices. That's wrong. What you need to focus on is ease of adoption. How can you get them onto your platform first really easily? And sometimes that means you do custom things to win the deal, and you do custom things that fit their process easier. That doesn't mean your tool doesn't have great opinions and best practices and industry insights. It just means they can adopt it. Then once they're on the tool, we think of the part 2 as, now we have the opportunity to help you evolve into something much better than what you currently have.
That's awesome. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the company now. So, what's your pitch to candidates? Why is Rootly a great place to work?
One of the things that I love most about Rootly is the transparency that we have as a business. This really started after the ZIRP era ended. In particular, I think a lot of people were seeing massive layoffs at all of these different companies. And of course, when you're at a startup, you're just wondering, is this going to make it? One of the things that we did was, at every all hands, we have them every 2 weeks at this point, we show our books. We show exactly how much money we have left, how much burn we're going through, our cash flow, how much money we're making, every single metric that we're tracking towards. Everything my finance team knows, my whole company knows. And we're insanely transparent about it. And we're honest about ourselves. And the second thing that comes along with transparency is we're very self-aware. Our all hands are never just celebrations. That's very, very rare. Maybe the last one of the year is skewed heavily towards a celebration, because usually luckily we've done quite well. But we spend half of our time thinking about the things that need to improve. Is our product behind? Are we being competitive? Are we investing enough here? How's our hiring going? How's the stability of our platform? all of those things, that self-awareness really drives us. And I think the thing I would say that defines our culture is not only our mission, but one other thing that really excites me is everyone here, regardless of the company that we were building, would still be here today, even if we pivoted, even if we changed, because they just want to see each other win. And you get to be part of this journey where we don't have these magical AI tailwinds that we stumbled upon. Everything, every outcome is driven by merit. And you really get to look back and say, this one thing I did, that's how I influenced the outcome of our business. As a company as a whole, we don't do very flashy things. And I think that's a great thing. In the early days, that attracted the wrong people. We tried so much to be this cool, sexy startup like an Airbnb and Shopify with all these perks and benefits and leave and all of those things. And we said to ourselves, the thing that we realized was the people we were attracting wanted those things and less so were tied to the mission and the hustle and the outcomes that they could drive here as a company. And so we got rid of all of it. We tell candidates all the time how hard it is to work here, how bad it is to work here, all the difficult things and challenges that they will go through. And they're still excited. It's very self-selecting. And that has kept our talent density very high and kept our bar very high. And and because of that culture we built, we've had people that have made the mistake in their first week and realized that themselves, like, hey, this is really not a place I want to be because I'm not going to be like everyone else here, and they leave. And that's, as a business, that saves you so much time and energy as well.
That's awesome. So, lot to unpack. I want to go through it one by one. The transparency thing, I love it. But where did that come from? So you mentioned the SERP era, like other companies potentially weren't doing well. You guys were in a good position. You were there to share it. I'm assuming that's kind of the idea of like, hey, let's make everybody calm that we're still here. How have you shifted now? Now it's been a few years since that. How has that kind of shifted the way that the company operates? Has it improved the way that an individual engineer, for example, does their job, or how does that affect them day to day? Other than, hey, I don't feel anxious that the company's going to go away.
I think it gives them, now it's a little bit less about easing their anxiety. I think everyone that works here understands we have pretty strong business fundamentals. The company is not really going to shutter its doors overnight. The majority of our contracts are now multi-year with these Fortune 500s. I think it gives them a greater sense of ownership. It gives them the sense that they are building this ourselves together with us. And it's not just two founders leading from the top and telling the company what to do. That transparency is extended to customers. All of our engineers directly interface with our customers. We have a Slack channel. We have hundreds of these Slack channels with our customers. You can DM the CTO of any of these companies and ask them, what do you think of this feature if you wanted to? Or if they report something, you can debug it live with them. And it's given them a sense of empowerment. Hey, usually what is traditionally the most sensitive data in a company that people won't normally talk about, maybe it feels taboo, or maybe you just never had access to, that gives them this sense of empowerment and ownership that then translates to their ability to confidently work with customers. Our engineers will ping a customer at NVIDIA and troubleshoot something, and they don't feel anxious. They don't feel fear. They don't feel the sense of needing my approval or their manager's approval to have that interaction. And in fact, it encourages them. And that then propagates to everyone else.
That's cool. So the other thing I wanted to dive into was this idea that you mentioned that everybody would, want to still work together if you guys pivoted. And I know you guys are remote, right? Like you have people not just in a single office. And so that feeling of being a part of a really cohesive whole, I've heard, is harder to do when you're a remote company. So what are you guys doing to kind of make this work? Is it that sense of ownership? Is it hiring the right people? Tell me the secret here.
I think hiring people that have been in a remote environment before is really important. One of the things that you miss out when you're remote is actually confrontation. People really shy away from confrontation, especially when you're remote, and it makes it easy. When you're in person, that confrontation builds a sense of bond and camaraderie that you otherwise wouldn't get. So we do index on folks that have, if they are going to be remote, we do make sure they have done remote first. If they're a very junior person, newer in their career, we do index on them being in office with us. So we're in primarily Toronto and San Francisco if they're there. The other thing that we really encourage is, we don't have a company offsite. There's not a set time every year where everyone gets together. In fact, I think that's actually really difficult to plan and quite distracting for a business. I think on paper it sounds great.
Sure.
But what we've done instead is we've empowered individuals to then be able to fly and go meet whoever they want on their team. If they want to go fly and meet a customer, great. If they want to fly and sit down with their design team for 2 weeks, great. We'll back all of that financially. And you don't need approvals in order to do that. And that's allowed people to say, hey, in tense times where this level of collaboration is needed, maybe we're building the start and launch of a new product, just go do it. And we push people to do that all the time.
That's cool. So you mentioned that you guys kind of cut a lot of the benefits, but I looked at your job site. You guys have a decent amount of benefits, and some of them are cool. Like I saw maybe this is the one where it's like 1K to go see another team member. You're also covering WeWorks and stuff like that. Can you tell me a little bit about like the methodology on the benefits, specifically around those that I haven't seen in any other places?
I think we try to work a lot of times backwards from the behaviors that we want to see.
Yeah.
The money to be used to travel and see a teammate, for example, was driven by because we want people to get to know their team better on a personal level as well. Most people spend 12 plus hours at work. The majority of their time, people are always on during weekends. People really don't go offline here. And that's kind of the reality of where we are as a business. Raw hours still matter a lot in order for us to achieve the goals and ambitious goals that we want. And we said to ourselves, hey, if people don't know each other well, they're going to be a lot less driven because of it. And that's kind of working backwards from where that part of our culture really matters, is people are motivated equally as much to help each other as they are for the business.
The last thing was you mentioned kind of this anti-sell. You repel people that probably aren't going to be a good fit. So what is that anti-sell? What does that repel? Like, what do you tell them? Like, you're not going to be a good fit because of this, or this?
One of the things that we try to tell people is not only the qualities of someone that would succeed in the role, but we describe in detail the qualities of someone that hasn't succeeded in the role and what that's looked like. And they are welcome to, and it's not like, we treat people poorly and they leave and they hate us. We have great relationships. People that have quit, we have great relationships with them. And in fact, I'll give you a very tangible example right now. We're interviewing for a particular marketing role and we're backfilling that seat. And the person that we're interviewing, we put him in touch with the person that quit their job there to ask him, what did you love about working at Really? And what did you not love? And that level of transparency gives them a lot of confidence that they're stepping into something that wouldn't be a surprise on day one. And that's what we're really optimizing for. What we expect out of the role, exactly. Day one is not going to be this, hey, I promise you rainbows and sunshines and a 4-day work week. And you come here and you're sitting in a server room. And not that that's the case, but...
So I'd love to dive into a little bit about how things get built. So you mentioned that things go pretty quickly. You guys bias towards actually making stuff. So, you say an idea comes in. How does it go from kind of idea to launch in, brief way?
My favorite thing to tell our engineering team is we are in the business of doing the boring things right. When we thought about building our on-call product, we spent 8.5 months only focusing on reliability. When we built our first series of AI products and agentic products, we focused on data privacy and security. Customers aren't buying us because we have a flashy button or there's a great animation somewhere. They're buying us for trust. They're buying us for reliability. They're buying us to power a lot of their critical infrastructure. And so when we build, having those principles become really important. And that's what we ultimately work from. When the company first began, we were able to get away with being this. I think every engineer wants to work at a company that ships 60 times a day and it's super flashy and you get to ship code immediately to production. And the way our company has evolved is that's not the case. We optimize for shipping safely. We still develop a ton, and we push a bunch of features that you will see your work and production in the hands of, everyone from, an Elastic all the way to a 911 call center in Norway will use your product. There's also some really fun, obscure ones. We work with nuclear power plants. We work with maximum security prisons in the US. We work with Burger King, which is really interesting. But I think having a set of principles in how we develop and ship is really important, because we don't want to sacrifice quality. We don't want to sacrifice reliability. And that's the most important thing for us, because that's what our customer trust ultimately depends on. I would rather wait an extra day.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you're exactly like, if your incident system goes down, like, I don't trust you guys anymore, right? Like, that is the most critical part of infrastructure that I need. So what does that then look like? How do you ensure reliability and safety, and the fact that the site's not going to go down and stuff?
Totally. It starts from the team. We've invested in our own SRE team. We have our own security team. We operate on release cycles that get QA'd heavily internally. We have a very rigorous deployment process that allows us to catch anything that would be foul that might go into production. We've architected our platform in a multi-cloud way as well, which is, for a startup, really absurd sometimes, but you have to do out of band things to ensure that, one of the things that we noticed early on was every customer was running on US East 1. We were running on US East 1. And sure, maybe it goes down every 900 days for 2 minutes, but that's still not good enough.
Right.
And so we said, we have to have a redundant workload inside of GCP. We have to have a multi-AZ setup as well. And that breeds customer trust. Ultimately, when we think about AI in general, we've gone as far as building our own custom LLM gateway that allows you to send data to Rootly. We obfuscate any of the PII, then it would hit a model.
Right.
And that model could be your enterprise OpenAI instance, that could be your internal Gemini instance, that could be anything that you choose to use. And that also has breeded a lot of customer trust. And that's allowed us to drive a ton of AI adoption across enterprises that I think normal consumer companies would struggle with. They would be stopped at the door and say, where's your security checklist for this?
Talk to me a little bit about selecting talent. Like, how do you guys think about, what are the top qualities you're looking for when you're looking for candidates?
I think there's a few things that we really try to identify. I think how we do our search is important. We work with a lot of external recruitment agencies, and we find ones that are hyper specialized in particular areas. Maybe for developer relations, we have one. For sales engineering, we have one. And so we work with a large variety. It does get expensive, but you certainly get what you pay for in terms of selection. The other thing and why that's important is, if you don't have, for a given role you're trying to fill, multiple candidates that are trying to fill this pipeline, multiple people that you're excited about, your bar naturally lowers itself, because you'll say, hey, will I find someone as good as them before? Or as the person that I have now? Maybe not. Maybe I will. And you start making these unnatural decisions in that candidacy. We look for a bunch of things. For leaders in particular, we look for a few interesting qualities. We think the best leaders are the best operators, the ones that can get into the details, the ones that their teams would trust to make these decisions. My VP of engineering that has been with me for the last 2 years, when he came here, he did the coding take-home exercise. I think the vast, vast majority of engineering leaders would strongly disagree with that. That's the right case. My sales leader on my team, my director of sales, he can confidently run our biggest deals by himself without any help. And he's able to guide his team through that journey as well. And so we do look heavily on leaders that can be in the details, that can build empathy with their customers and don't just operate behind a dashboard. And so for leaders, that becomes really important.
What are you excited about for 2025? Like, what are the big things that Rootly is going to be doing?
I think it would be illegal to answer this any other way unless I said AI. So I'm really excited about how the future of work will be done. I think LLMs are here to stay. I think the hype cycle is real. And, the things that we're working on, the production use cases that we're seeing with our customers are completely transformed by it. Our company as a whole has been one of the best tools to help you shorten your reactive reliability loop, helping you confidently be on call, helping you resolve your incidents quickly and consistently. But now our focus is turning much more to proactive reliability. How can we help you predict when things go wrong? And even before you step into the war room, how can we help you identify these issues quickly? And so, really supercharging that workflow, we're super excited about. And we're also continuously excited about the things that won't change. Customers always want to resolve incidents faster. They always want our tool to be reliable. And so, we're spending equal amounts of effort doubling down on what's been working for us. And the thing that's also not going to change is our intense focus on being the best incident management platform and making sure that we can hire the best talent possible.
So you've had an awesome career. You've been at large companies like Instacart, and you've started your own fast-growing startup. What are some counterintuitive things that maybe you've learned or things that have surprised you over your career?
When I was a PM leading product at Instacart, you're taught to say no a lot. And I think that is very counterintuitive when you're running a startup. You realize that no one wants you, you're nothing, you're not important, and you have to go earn it. And to do that, you have to say yes to a lot of things. And a lot of it too requires being very close to your customers, building a ton of empathy, doing the non-traditional things. I'll give you a really good example of this. I signed our first $1 million in sales. Once we reached over 100 customers, there's this tendency to start building dashboards to use amplitude and whatnot. Like, how is Amit logging in? Is he creating enough workflows? What's his user activity? Or all of these things. So we started creating these dashboards that started summarizing our rich customer insights into these simplified numbers. And what I realized was that detached us from what we were actually building and solving too much. And so one day I deleted all of it. I deleted every single of these tools. I deleted how data was flowing into Segment, and we were running blind, and for good reason. And I told the team in our all hands, the only way that we will know how a customer is doing and using our product and whether or not they love us and would renew with us is we're going to talk to them. We're going to get on the phone. We're going to do this unscalable thing. And that helped us shape the trajectory and DNA of not only our product, but our company. We have 1 million dashboards now, of course,
Sure.
but we still do that. The default motion is to talk to our customers. And I think had we not done that, we would have been far too removed from what the reality was.
It's very non-intuitive. Like, what did you do to make sure that you were keeping pace with those customers? Was it like, hey, we're going to talk to them every week, or it was kind of like, we'll do it ad hoc as we want to learn things? Like, how did you make sure that you were still getting enough information?
Having hundreds of customers is really hard to have a
Yeah,
30-minute call,
of course.
even because all your time would be spent on that. And so we do a mixture of being very powerful asynchronously. So we use tools like Pylon, for example, inside of Slack that helps us manage all of these channels and our activity with our customers. And we make sure that they constantly have a touch point with us. When they report an issue, let's say inside of Slack, we are oftentimes fixing that within 2 hours of them reporting it. And we are able to build relationships, we have conversations. And what that amounts to in some interesting ways is you end up being invited to their weddings and talking at them, and they become close friends of yours. And
That's cool.
ultimately that helps you drive business because people still buy from people.
That's awesome. Well, JJ, this has been awesome. I feel like I learned something in this chat. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to learn more about Rootly, where should they go?
The best place to learn about Rootly is just our website. You can go to rootly.com, or you can follow me on LinkedIn. I try to post insightful things. I think 99% would find it boring, but the 1% that find it exciting, I think it resonates well.
That's awesome. Got to find your niche. Thanks, JJ.
Thank you so much for having me.